Hello and welcome to the New Frontier. I am excited to be joined today by Gaétan. Gaétan is the CEO of Diffusely, an AI-powered visual production platform for automotive and fashion players. They started as a marketplace. He pivoted the company to verticalized enterprise AI software, scaling to 11 million ARR over 3 years, which is just fantastic numbers, and now has a team of over 100 people. He is an engineer by trade and background. And Gaétan, welcome.
Thank you, Max. Really happy to be here with you.
Yeah, I hope you enjoyed my French pronunciation of your name. I don't know if I got it right, but I tried my best, and that's what matters, I guess. So yeah, I guess we'd just love to walk through your journey today, as it's a journey that I know many of our listeners want to go on, and certainly I want to go on. So maybe just take us all the way back to the original founding of Diffusely, if it was still called Diffusely. Like, what was the story behind that?
Yeah, sure. So the initial name of the company was Miro, MERO. So I'm not a founder of this one. I was actually I would say kind of a late founder. I joined the company at the very beginning, but I was not a founder. And the purpose of Miro was to basically build a marketplace connecting professional photographers like all around the world and companies with huge volume of standardized content, visual content. So basically companies like travel companies or food delivery companies, like all the Uber Eats, all the Deliveroo, Airbnb, all these companies, they scaled really fast between 2015 and 2020, and they basically had huge volumes of visual content to produce, and it was not a job. It was not what they were good at. And so we developed this managed marketplace play where you had basically this whole community of photographers a bit everywhere in the world, and on our side we are basically managing this community and also delivering very fast results and very fast media to these type of clients. So this is how the company started, I would say between 2016 and up to 2022. It grew really, really fast between 2016 and 2020. We did a lot of fundraising and stuff like that. It was kind of fashionable at the moment, and we grew really fast. And then COVID hit us pretty hard. So basically, you couldn't first send a photographer on the street; was impossible. But also a bit deeper, I'd say on one side, the consolidation and the cut in marketing spend from all these type of actors, that was pretty tough between 2020 and 2022. And the second effect was the evolution of technology, right? So basically, to shoot a sushi plate, you don't need a professional photographer anymore, right? With new phones, new stuff, you basically decreased a lot the cost of accessibility to this kind of shots that are pretty standardized, that are not kind of artistic, right? And so this hit us pretty hard in our business, and that's why in 2022, so I actually became CEO of the company and decided to stop totally this business model of the marketplace, and that's when we pivoted to basically producing AI solution instead of marketplace solutions.
Let's pause here. Take because this is super interesting, and I was just reading. Have you read the Hard Things About Hard Things by Ben Horowitz?
Yeah.
So
actually, I did.
So he talks in there about hard pivoting his company, right? So just take us into the situation, because it's a really tough thing. How many employees did you have? What was your revenue? What was the growth like? What was that making you consider this decision?
So actually in 2022, so basically before COVID, we were, I would say, 800 employees, and we were doing near 45 million GMV. And then 2022, so business was harder, so we were doing less GMV, but was still 25 million GMV, and there were 400 employees. So that's when we pivoted. We are basically 400 employees, with 20 to 25 million GMV at the time.
But I mean, pivoting into a totally new space, right? A lot of these employees, I imagine, are not going to be well suited for the AI era. So, like, how did you think about? Did you feel like the business was going to die? Basically, were you like, we either pivot this or everything's over?
Yeah. So two elements on that. So the first one is on the business side. So it was probably not going to die because you still had like a minimum of demand on the professional photography side, especially in some domains like e-commerce and stuff like that. But the economics of it were not interesting anymore. Like basically, your addressable market was way smaller than it used to be, right? So that's on the economic side, and so we basically had a very small growth at the time, and the bottom line was not really good because we were basically scaling everywhere, but the demand was way less interesting than it was a few years before. That's on the business side. And on the employee side, so it was actually like a full pivot, but it was not a new thing for the company because we were actually using AI workflows and AI solution internally to deliver Hello, Max?
Yeah, you're saying you're using AI to deliver.
Yeah, sorry. Actually, the whole neighborhood went dark, so that's that's a good moment. But that's life. So yeah, so basically, we were actually using AI at the moment to deliver, in faster SLAs and stuff like that. So basically, the professional photographers were taking the pictures, they were delivering on our platform, and then we needed to edit the image, we needed to process them, we need to extract data from it, and that we had actually developed workflows to do that internally. And so when we pivoted, it was more, okay, let's take what we were doing internally and make it a real product rather than just starting from scratch from anywhere. But to do so, we took actually what we did internally, but we also bought two small companies that were actually doing that on their end in very verticalized way. Because I think the difference with the marketplace pay was also that we needed to be way more verticalized. So like you don't edit, you don't create an image through AI for automotive the same way you do for fashion or for real estate or for food, right? So that was probably the big change. And to come back to your topic about employees, yeah, it was a big change for employees as well, right? And most of the employees we have today were not there in the previous play, right? Because they were happy in this kind of logistic and service business of marketplace, and now that we are basically just building a product and a tech, they're probably less relevant or less happy to do that. So yeah, there was a big shift in of course in the structure of the company, in the governance, in everything, in the values as well, in the way you do the business. So yeah, it was a massive change.
How did you communicate that you were going to make this decision?
You mean internally or
Yeah,
externally?
like, what did you tell
Yeah.
people? We're just changing everything.
That was probably one of the toughest moments, I would say. So basically, we first decided with like the leaders of the company to take the decision. It was not it was not like done in a day or whatever. But once we decided to do it, once we conveyed and agreed on the idea where we need to do it, then we executed very, very fast. And so we basically went to, and in France you also have to talk to unions and stuff like that, and because we are many employees, so it's not that easy to do.
Yeah.
And so we basically went to them and said, okay guys, we're going to show you the numbers of the business from the past years. We're going to show you how the market is evolving on professional photography, and we're going to explain to you very transparently why it doesn't make sense for the company anymore to invest on that, or to spend, basically burn money on that, right? And we are going to also show you why we are confident about AI. And this was before all the AI fuss about ChatGPT and Gen AI and stuff like that. So it was before that, but still the evolution of tech and how we can now create very nice visual through mobile apps and stuff like that. And so we basically went very transparent. And the transparent part is, I would say, the easiest thing, and then the non-transparent part is like, okay, probably most of you don't have anymore like a seat at the table to do that, because it doesn't make sense for you, it doesn't make sense for us. So that was probably the toughest part. But we basically did that in less than a month overall.
So you did like mass layoffs, basically.
Yeah, totally. We did we did massive layoffs. We took care of the people who left, obviously, but we had to do this big restructuring, because we basically went from more than 400 people to 100. So yeah.
And in the hard things about hard things, Ben kind of talks about similar to what your story. They restructured from a cloud company to a software company, but then the senior leadership itself had to change, because the senior, like, so did you have that where you had these people helping you to make this decision to pivot to AI, and then you're like, well, I've got these people, like leaders who are great at marketplace, who are like the people on. How did you manage that?
So I mean the realization of, okay, am I the right one to do the job, is something that I think we should expect from leaders. To say, for instance, if I think I'm not the right person at the right moment, even if I'm the CEO, I think I should say it at some point. Maybe one day, like in 1 year or 2 years, I won't be the right CEO for the company. And at this time, indeed, as you said, when we decided, some of the leaders, some of the C-level said, okay, I'm not confident in this new direction or whatever, it's totally new to me, or I'm not the right person. And so most of them actually either left. Some of them I pushed a bit the reflection, I would say, to say, okay, probably you're not the right person, which is something I needed to do. I would say 2/3 of them changed in the year after the pivot. So it was not immediate, but in the year after, I say, many changes also in the leadership team as well.
I want to get on to talking about Diffusely and the new company, but just before we leave this, any like major lessons you took from how you communicated such a massive change and managed, all of this, which is, people's lives, but essentially, right, if the business is going to die, the business is going to die, everyone is going to die. So everyone's going to lose their job. So, you have to make decisions so that, as you say, like 10% of the people can stay, whatever.
Yeah, so it was not the first time we did like a restructuring, because basically during COVID we had to do that as well. So I think we also learned, and more recently, like obviously for some small teams or small things, we also needed to basically announce bad news, I would say. So I think we learned a lot with different iterations of this change that, for me, I would say, common to any kind of company. Any kind of company go through these restructuring challenges and stuff like that. And I would say what I learned from these different steps was that transparency in like explaining the why without hiding anything, and the different, and what's at stake as well for the company, and why the company needs to take this decision, because a company also has bosses who are the investors and stuff like that. So several decisions, very transparent about the market, about the why, is probably the first lesson. And the second lesson, which is for me obvious, but some people don't do it the right way, is like you need to take care of the people who live the right way, right? So you need to basically have them live in decent enough conditions so they can find a new job after that. But if the market is complex, give them a few months of more of money, but at the same time you try to basically cut the cost a bit because you are in difficult position. So you have to find the right balance, and basically being very present and very accessible to these people at this moment is key, and do it the most human way possible.
Apart from obviously the money side, how do you help people leave in the right way? Like what can you do as a leader to do that?
I mean, there are several things you can do. There's of course helping them find new jobs, which is what we did as well. Like everyone had some contacts, and obviously the leaders of the company have probably huge, larger networks in general around the companies. So we did like a list of all the employees that were leaving with their resume, with their skills and stuff like that, and we kind of pushed them to other companies that we knew were hiring at the time, and there were some companies hiring. That's the first one. Then there's of course any kind of recommendation letter we did afterwards, like reference calls, stuff like that. And in France, so we actually did that in France, but also in the US. There's also all the training parts, upskilling parts that you can do, and usually in France, for instance, you are quite incentivized, or not incentivized, but you have to do it basically to upskill people and to find some way of upskilling people that are living in such conditions during tough times. So that's also a way to actually train some people personally and some stuff, and just making them more likely to find a new job fast. That was the way. And then there's of course the accessibility. Apart from the money, the accessibility, the transparency, and the I would say the one-on-one explanation with the CEO, for instance, or with a C-level is also a way to make it smoother, I would say, than just you receive a letter and that's how it is.
Yeah. Well, there's very few people I think who've done had to go through that, so it's really interesting to kind of learn and listen, and hopefully everyone listening never has to face such a horrible.
Yeah, it's not a skill. It's not a skill you want to have.
Yeah, exactly.
You want to, but once you have it, I think it's useful. And what it made me realize as well is like probably in any company I would be into, there would be phases like that. Maybe not that extreme, and I hope. But even if you need to let go like a team of 3, 4, 5 people, for I would say for other than performance reasons, which is another topic, but for like no change in business, pivot, restructuring of something, it happens in any company every year, right? And so I learned through the hard way, or the hard volume, let's say, and now I think it's also easier for me to do it for smaller decisions around these same topics.
Yeah. So let's get on to talking about Diffusely. So you're in 2022, Stable Diffusion launches in September. So you're like talk to us about the kind of pivot. I mean, pivoting with 100 people is still pretty hard, right? Because like that's kind of crazy. Like I can imagine doing a pivot with 10 people, because at least you can get around the table. But like how on earth do you move a ship with 100 people?
So it's actually a question I get a lot, which is, wouldn't it have been easy to pivot with less people? Which probably is a relevant question. So there are a few things that were different at the time. First, when we did this pivot, we acquired 2 companies just before this pivot, basically just to basically launch the thing, that were, would say, technical companies doing very, very good things, but very specialized on AI models for fashion and automotive, right? So we basically also started with.
How much did you raise? Just give us a sense of the scale of like how much money you're playing with.
So we in the past, for the marketplace model, we raised up to 200 million.
So okay, so you had quite a lot of cash sitting
around.
So
basically when we did the pivot, we had I would say 40 million remaining or something like that. So we had burned quite some money
Wow.
in the scale and stuff.
Yeah.
No,
Okay.
so 200 is not actually the last amount, but it's a total amount from 2016 to 2020.
Yeah.
So we
Cool.
expanded a lot. So basically, yeah. So we had a bit of cash. That's one of the reasons actually why. So there's two reasons why we didn't start from like very very little. There were two reasons. The first one is like we needed to have a pivot that was, I would say, an ambitious one. That needed to go fast. Why? Because the equity story of the company and the different investors and what was at stake at the time, it was not compatible with basically starting again from very little and growing in 10 years and whatever. It was like, okay, let's pivot fast and let's prove that it works fast, right? And this was an external constraint, because otherwise, I mean, on my personal point of view, I would have started very very little, right? That's the first reason why we started with like an ambitious pivot with like 3 verticals, 2 company acquired, and let's go fast, right? That's the first reason, which is basically I would say an equity story reason. Yeah, and it's totally linked to the fact that we also had cash, right? So if I had started with 1 million, I wouldn't have done this for sure. The second reason is like we were quite bullish on the market. The fact that these AI for visual content verticalized play were something that was going to explode in the coming years, and we also saw that through our due diligences and acquisitions and stuff like that. And basically, yeah. So we said, okay, we need to go this way, and we need to go fast. So these are 2 reasons why we basically went directly into 3 plays with like 100 people and went as fast as possible. Doesn't mean that all the choices and all the investment we made at the time were good, for sure, but at least we went it right into it and not iterating, testing, because when the funds invested in your company in 2017, basically they will not stick with you forever, right?
Yeah. So the company, is this right, pivoted into 2 spaces, like generating images for photo shoots for fashion and then for automotive.
Yeah. So at the time we started with actually 3 verticals. So fashion, automotive, and real estate. And we were basically, so the idea of the 3 products were the same. It was like, okay, we help enterprise clients. So we don't do B2C. We don't do like very small businesses. We help enterprise clients produce their visual content through AI, right? And this can be only editing images sometimes. For instance, in fashion, you usually have photos that are incoming from photo shoots that are taken in studios and everything. Or it can be, using generative AI to recreate part of the images, even though you don't want to touch the real thing you say, right? So you don't want to touch the clothes, you don't want to touch the car, but you can touch the scene, you can touch the way basically put the object in the scene you want to sell. So basically, we are doing actually still now visual merchandising part, but through AI. So we did it on 3 verticals, and this summer we actually sold one of the verticals. That's the real estate one. That's why today we focus on fashion and automotive.
So you've got like a team of editors and whatnot left over from the last company. So you've got a team of people who can take, because AI at the time, 2022, you're talking to someone, we were, I don't want to say the first, we're one of the first companies to do like images for AI. Like me and my co-founder we met maybe a week or so after Stable Diffusion first launched, and we're like, this is a cool idea. And then there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people doing this, right? But we're one of those early people. But the images were terrible. Like let's be honest, right? I remember it kind of took us like 6 months to kind of accept that the images were terrible, because like we wanted it to work. But and our customers wanted it to work because it was very, very cool, right? You type in a prompt to generate an image. Like people forget how like magical that was, and you get on it. You show someone this technology and they're like, wow, this is, this before ChatGPT launch, this is just like very, very cool stuff. So did it work? Like you had an enterprise customer, they, you just talk us through the workflow, maybe maybe let's talk about fashion, because it's probably more relevant to the listeners of the podcast.
Yeah. So I mean, fashion, I would say editing of images is a very old job. Basically, it's fashion brands have always been working the same way, which is basically you have photo shoots happening in studios usually, or outside, but mostly in studios. So like people actually like shooting models with clothes all the time, right? With stylists, makeup artists and stuff like that. And then afterwards, once they've done this, they get raw images, and then actually people edit these images. Like they remove the background, they put some shadows, they remove the grain. There's some dust here and there, so they remove it. Okay, that's the first step, and then after that, they basically format it from the output, right? It can be the e-commerce website. For instance, the e-commerce website can be with a pinkish tone or with like a certain crop or whatever, or can be for all the marketplaces they will sell onto, right? And so this is also the work of other editors, and then they push that to their tools, which is usually like a DAM, a digital asset manager, and then to their website. That can be either their own website or like a CMS or stuff like that. So that's how it works, right? And basically our job today is how can we make this process of producing and sending the image faster and cheaper, okay? And at the beginning, you still had, algorithm in AI that were not generative AI, but that were, classic computer vision stuff that were, removing the background. I mean, the company Remove Background exists since 2015, or I don't know, even before that. They were not using generative AI models. They were doing like classic computer vision, OpenCV, whatever models. So basically, a lot of people have been working since a long time on, okay, how can you automate this editing or this creation or this formatting until the end, right? And what we do is exactly that. What we do is basically we help these brands going from the input, that can be either like the image of a cloth or the image of a model with a cloth or image of whatever, to delivering the end result on their website. And we do that through a combination of AI workflows and human expertise, because basically in B2B, especially for fashion, you cannot just let AI work, right? You cannot just play with AI and just say, okay, I want to test, and there's a button missing or there's like a shadow that makes sense. So you need to combine human expertise with AI workflows that are doing most of the job. And so you deliver this basically service as a software, let's say, on an API, connected to their tools to deliver their images faster and cheaper.
So you're no longer taking the photos, but you're basically doing everything from receiving the photos to it being live across wherever the customer is selling them.
Yeah, so right? we actually kept a part of studio. So we also have a fashion studio.
So you still take so you're still end to end for everything.
Yeah, so we can do the end to end, but we can also do part of it. So we have clients that are only using the software, which is basically they input their photos, or we take them actually from their product inventory management tool or DAM or whatever, or from their studio tool to deliver to their website. But we can also produce the photos because we have like big studios with like, I would say, professional services on top of that if they want. And we do the end-to-end thing, yeah. And that's the goal of it, because they want to get the visibility. They want to get everything about their images and how they can format it the right way. And usually they send these images or these products, these SKUs, to like 10 or 20 marketplaces. And so, to get the visibility on all that and get the right guidelines for the right workflow, whatever, it's pretty complex. And it was very, very, very manual until a few years ago.
Yeah. I mean, it's a space I understand very well. And as I'm sure you don't need telling, it's a very competitive space, as I think is every space now with AI. Like everywhere, there's investors, tons of VC money, tons of founders, tons of like small, like 1 or 2 person teams who are like still kind of, like probably going up against you, trying to be bigger than they are for customers. So a couple like questions, like, taking this new business to 11 million in 3 years is pretty good going, right? I mean, that's pretty insane. What was been your like, how have you gone to market? What was your GTM motion for that?
And I think it's going to be one of our, I would say, a differentiator compared to competitors. We see ourselves and the way we tackle the business is as really like an enterprise B2B sales led business, right? So we actually have sales on the ground selling, but we can do that because we only target enterprise customers. So we will never target, like a brand with like 100 SKUs per year or whatever. We only target like the people with big volume, because these people with big volumes, they need actual service as a software. They cannot just play with Nano Banana or with Midjourney or whatever to create their images. They cannot do that because given their volume, it doesn't make sense at scale. There will not be any consistency. It will not be trackable and stuff like that. So we really have this approach of, okay, that's the same for automotive. We are only tackling large businesses, enterprise, where basically the production process is here, but it's heavy, it's costly, and it's very slow. And this is a differentiator because most of our, and you said it, most of, with the evolution of AI and the accessibility of, models, there's a new model every day and stuff like that, we have more and more competitors that are actually working on, I would say, the AI part of the work, which is basically, just you input an image, you output an image. And the accessibility, the technology of that is evolving, and it evolves every day. And we need also to track that because obviously it's part of our product. But it's not the only part compared to people that are just, having a drag and drop interface or just do a B2C play or an app or whatever. When you do B2B, when you do large B2B specifically, you cannot just focus on AI. You cannot just focus on the result. Result is important, but you need to focus on what's around it. And around it is the scalability, the infrastructure, the scalability, the fact that you can deliver thousands of images per minute if necessary. Second, you need to deliver on the trust. You cannot just put the tool in the hand of 10 people within the company, within your clients, and that can play with the tool, but because there will never be any consistency between one and another. So you need to have that. And the third one is like, if you want to be adopted and used within this large enterprise, you need to be integrated in their ecosystem. So you need to be connected to their product inventory management. You need to be connected to their digital asset manager. You need to be connected to their DMS for cars. You need to be connected to their website provider, the CMS and stuff like that, because then you bring value also horizontally to their process. You are not just an API that can be, as they all say, that we're just a wrapper on an LLM or whatever. You are a software. You are a real software that is integrated with their CRM, with their different teams that they can edit, they can check the images, and that's for me, that's the real definition of service as a software, right? It's like you are a service. At the end, you deliver a service, but it's the software margin come from the fact that you will use AI to do all that.
No, I mean, there's a lot to unpack there, but I totally get it. But just before, I want to talk about like how you're managing the customer success. But before we move on to that, like, what is the best channel you found to reach these enterprises?
Well, LinkedIn.
LinkedIn.
Probably LinkedIn. Yeah, outbound. So I would say we have 20 to 30% inbound and 70% outbound in our pipe. And our outbound is mostly LinkedIn tools and stuff like that. It's pretty classic CRM stuff. So we have HubSpot, we have LinkedIn, and then we have also fancy AI tools to track the calls and how we deliver the calls and how the sales team is trained. So pretty classic outbound methods. And also I would say this is half of it, and half of it is events. So we do a lot of conferences that are specialized. For automotive it's NADA, big conferences like this. For fashion it's going to be like NRF, Tech for Retail, all these like Shop Talk, all these kind of conferences that are key to for the actors of this ecosystem.
So what tools are you using for the LinkedIn outbound?
Sorry, what?
Which tools are you using for LinkedIn outbound?
That's a good question. I think it's HubSpot automation plus the LinkedIn tools themselves.
Fair enough. Yeah. So that's I mean, it's interesting that you say that. So email is dead. You think like people just ignoring spammy emails? Or does it still have a
No, but when I say LinkedIn, when you outbound on LinkedIn, they receive an email. So basically, for me, the consequence is pretty much the same. You will, I mean, as a CEO, I receive a lot of outbound emails.
Yeah.
And most of them I don't even know, but they come from like a LinkedIn check and just an email saying it's sent through LinkedIn. Right?
So it's all this sequence, a mix of LinkedIn and
it's multi-touch point anyway, right? So you have LinkedIn, then you send an email, then you try to call. But
yeah,
I would say for me, LinkedIn is more for identification of the target, and then the sales use also emails. They use calls. We also have a cold call team that actually does cold call, especially for, I would say, smaller players, like mid-market players, not very large one. You're not going to call Zalando, even though it could work. But if you have like medium dealerships, you call the dealer, and you explain your product. So it also, there's also a cold call routine and rituals in the company as well.
Yeah, makes sense. So then let's switch over to talk about customer success, because you're managing these big customers, complex workflows. Like what processes have you put in place to make that work?
So it's a question of what's the size of the customer as well. So you need
well, for enterprise, like how it's very challenging. Multiple stakeholders, different stakeholders want different things. Probably, I don't want to project onto you, but probably some of your stakeholders absolutely love you, think it's fantastic. Some of them absolutely hate you, and they think that you're going to steal their job. So you're really, really quite complicated, right? When you're dealing with these kind of enterprises, maybe you have the existing photographer working at a fashion brand who is very, very worried about AI, doesn't want to use AI, doesn't want to adopt AI, will be, when you're not in the room, will be talking against any AI tool every meeting. And then you have people who, you sold to, who this is their career and this is their big, this is their big thing to help them get the next promotion. And so like you have all of the, like how are you managing this?
So I think it's both a problem of sales, because when you need to sell, you have the same challenge, like talking to the right people, getting your champion and stuff like that. And also a problem of CSM, which is once you're into it, how can you get your tools to be adopted? The first thing is like we do a lot of land and expand. So we do a lot of, okay, let's do for now one line of product for fashion person, or let's do like just the peak volumes when the people internally cannot deal with it, to convince that there's a lot of things that are that is trustable within what we do, and that people can actually use us and see some productivity, efficiency also as well in what they do. That's the first thing, is we do a lot, and the same for automotive, same for fashion. We do a lot of, okay, we start with like a limited number of images, whether it's pics or whether it's a line of product or 2 dealerships in the dealership group or whatever. And then we expand and upsell within the group. That's the first thing. But then the way you gain the trust is basically by removing them from tasks they didn't like, right? And that's most of the case. Most of the time, it's the case that these people were actually doing boring editing for many hours, and then they can focus on either lifestyle shots that we don't do, for instance, because they are too artistic, or on using our tools and inputting their artistic view on it, right? Because our tool, even if it's a managed tool, you need to define the guidelines, you need to check the images and give feedback, you need to define what's going to be the looks. And for instance, we do AI shoots, so we go from clothes we like as a ghost, like in a just on a plastic mannequin or as a ghost, to a clothes that is worn on model with AI, right? So the model is an AI model, and for this, there's the whole challenge of looks, right? What's the right top with the right button? You don't have the model anymore in the studio that can choose with a stylist and whatever. So basically, we also internalize some of that stuff where they need to get this input to us. And so we refocus them on tasks where there's a lot of creativity. Basically, finding what are the right shoes with the right top, with the right bottom, and also giving feedback on images, also defining the guidelines and stuff like that, rather than just operating, removing the background or just taking a photo and just improving the photo and stuff like that. So, but where I agree with you is like it's also a change management topic, right? You need to get adopted by these people. And fashion, for instance, is an industry that goes slower than other industries on that matter, right? Because it's much more artistic driven by artistic views, or driven by people that are not that ROI driven, and so it's slower, I would say, but it's getting step by step. People are more and more convinced that AI is a powerful tool for that team to focus on other topics.
Any advice on driving that adoption in these enterprises? Because as you say, making the sale and getting the adoption, two different challenges.
So we do a lot of webinars, QBRs, and stuff like that, where we get with the client to understand how they use the product and why they don't use it, for instance. So the product managers, for instance, are really involved in that, and the CSM team. And then it's also a question of trust, I would say, expertise in the industry. And that's also why we chose this, okay, let's build verticalized solutions, because then we can also show that for fashion we are experts. We actually have the studios. Studios is a proof of our expertise, right, in the field. And so when your CSM or when your product manager is as an expert as you as the client, as much as an expert as the client is on fashion views and how we should fashion and everything, then you gain some trust, and then you can convince on the adoption level. So I would say trust, and just get a good product. And if your product is good, I think they will totally see the result, and most of them are really amazed by the results they get. So that's also how we convince them.
Yeah. Obviously having a good product is kind of, I guess, the best advice, but any other advice on managing like that upselling process? So I imagine you're doing like a 6-month pilot or whatever, then you've got to try and expand all the lines, all of it. Like how do you manage that internally? Do you get the salesperson back involved? Does the CS person do it? Like, how are you doing it?
So it depends on the categorization of the deal. If it's like a strategic deal, so we have people that are only focused on very strategic clients that have and are nearly VPs, very high level understanding of the ecosystem, of the industry they're working into, and all the product topics, as well as the sales one. So when you go into very strategic deals, these are the ones that are involved very much. They are nearly doing the sales, I would say. When you go into, I would say, lower tiers in terms of client size or client potentials, then it's a combination of the CSM and the sales goes back in the loop as well. I think selling is still a skill that needs to go back to sell, and upselling is definitely selling. You're not just upselling like a new seat or whatever. So the sales, especially when it's a big upsell, or it's like a new line of product or a new dealership or whatever, the salesperson goes back into the loop as well with the CSM team.
Wow. Okay. Well, I think that has been super interesting. I guess my last question then, we talked a lot about firing at the beginning. Any advice in hiring? Like probably the the other really important part of building a company.
I'm a big believer of not that extreme, but of the founder mode on that aspect, which is basically, especially for the first, I would say, 100 people, having the founder or the C-level, or people that are really representing the values and the spirit of the company being in the process. I'm a big believer on that. I think scaling hiring process after 200, 300 people is a very big challenge when it matters, when it goes into values and how people will be involved in the company, how they will be able to go to 120% of their capacity and stuff like that. So the first thing is, I took a lot of time back in the days, but still today, into the hiring process, putting a lot of vetoes and stuff like that, and sometimes potentially too much involved. So that's the first part. Today we are hiring at a, I would say, normal pace compared to before. So it's easier to take time and hiring at the pace we we had back in the time was a real challenge in consistency of the people and stuff like that. So I would hire now. I would probably the lessons is I would hire slower than what I used to do, even though it would mean probably pushing harder on current people. So I think hiring too fast is a clear danger. It's a clear danger in consistency of the talents and getting A players and stuff like that. I prefer to be I prefer to be without anyone than with someone that is not the right person, I would say.
What's your process look like? What's the interview process? Do you give people a test or something like this?
Yeah. So it depends on the job, but we usually do some tests.
Let's say customer success. We just talked about that.
So for sales and customer success, we will have like a live test of with someone. Okay, imagine it's your client and stuff like that. So we'll like a case study, I would say, but live case study compared to tech, where it's going to be like coding test and stuff like that. And then it's for me apart from this test. Especially when you hire, I would say, senior people that have more than 10 years experience, it's not that much. It's a bit, but it's not that much about the skills. It's more about, the mindset of the person. And that's, for me, it's more, human interactions. That's why we always have a C-level, a person. So we always have at least 3 or 4 interactions with people that needs to agree on the profile on top of the test. You see what I mean? Because at the end, it's mostly a question of people, right? If the person, except for exceptions where the skills are not that at all, are not there at all, or for very specific jobs, the rest is like, okay, if you are willing to take feedback, if you are willing to push yourself hard, if you are interested in what we do and genuinely interested in the business, and if you are, the right mindset in terms of with the values of the company and stuff like that. If you have all these elements, then even if you struggle a bit at the very beginning, you will catch up. If you miss one of these elements, you will never catch up if there's a bump. And there are always bumps. There are always moments where you are out of your comfort zone, or moments where you are changing jobs or changing stuff. So if you have all the right, I would say, soft skills, even though hard skills are very important, especially in some jobs, is for me the most important part. And usually, for instance, when I say no to someone, it's mostly because I don't feel one of these ones.
What question can you ask someone to test if they are good at being humble and taking feedback?
That's a very good question. So for me, it's more a feeling you can have. So I trust a lot
your gut feeling,
the gut feeling a lot on that type of questions. But you also can and I usually do that. You also can ask people about moments in their previous companies where they got difficulties, or they were really below the expectations, and how they reacted and stuff like that. That's about feedback. You can also I think humility is easy to perceive, and it's something I'm very sensitive to, humility and stuff like that. But when people tell their story, you can also say if they it's going to be difficult to work with them. It's going to be tough to get feedback or to give feedback. So I guess it's mostly a question of gut feeling also.
Fair enough. Well, Gaétan, thank you so much. I think, Stephen Bartlett always says on his podcast, I hope no one is listening, but if you are, keep it a secret, or something to that effect. And I think this has been so informational and useful. I hope no one else has heard this, because it's really helped me, but I'm sure, lots of people are going to enjoy this and find it useful. So thank you for coming.
Thank you, Max. It was a real pleasure to be there, and happy to continue any kind of conversation. Or I think it's important to share, and the story is not finished on our end as well. So we have a lot of challenges to overcome as well. So yeah, really happy to be there.